Good evening and welcome to the Cobb Democrats Virtual Town Hall. I'm Jacqueline Bedadapour, the chair of the Cobb County Democratic Committee. On behalf of the entire executive committee, I'd like to thank you for joining us. Tonight's program is focused on candidates running for office in Cobb's justice system and will be divided into two sections. First, we will visit with Flynn Broady, the Democratic candidate for Cobb County District Attorney. He will appear on the November 3rd general election ballot. After Flynn, we will hear from the August 11th runoff candidates for Superior Court Clerk, Superior Court Judge, and State Court Judge. So let's get started. Welcome, Flynn, and thank you for taking some time to speak with us tonight about the Cobb's DA office and your campaign.
Thank you, Jackie. I really appreciate you and Matt having me on tonight. I'm looking forward to answering your questions, telling you a little bit about my campaign and whatever it is you need to know about me.
Great. So let's start with why did you decide to run for Cobb DA?
Well, since I've been a prosecutor from 2008, one of the things I've noticed is when I go to courtrooms, most of the time I see nothing but minorities. And lots of times they're not represented by lawyers. So in their mind, they're not getting a fair shake. And I think it's about time that we had somebody who's, as our district attorney, who's going to look at that, look at the issues that affect our minority communities. Because if we can fix those issues, we can make public safety the top word here in Cobb County. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to run, because I really feel I can make a difference. I have a lot of ideas that I'd like to put in place to heighten our public safety, reduce our mass incarceration, and also just make the courts more equitable.
Great. So you have a lifetime of committed public service, starting with 26 years in the U.S. Army. Your military career included 3 overseas tours. In Operation Iraqi Freedom, you led 157 soldiers in combat as an infantry first sergeant. Can you tell us a little bit about how your military career shaped the person you are today and the leadership, perspective, and judgment you will bring to the DA's office if elected?
Yes, since I was probably about 5 or 6 years old, I had always wanted to join the military. And even though I went to Tennessee State on a full scholarship, that wasn't where I wanted to be at that time in my life. So I did enlist into the military. I've had the pleasure of serving in the 101st Airborne Division, had the pleasure of serving in the 1st Armored Division, the 5th Infantry Division. I was a combat infantryman, as you said, 3 overseas tours, and 1 tour as a first sergeant for Alpha Company 1/6 Infantry. The leadership I learned in the military is how to work together with a diverse group of individuals, how to mold a team, to seek out and do their very best each and every day. And I think that relates very well to the DA's office, because one of the things you have to do as a military leader is you have to make a lot of decisions that focus on what is right, what is wrong. And especially in combat, those decisions, they can't be taught in the middle of combat. They have to be taught beforehand. And I've always prided myself on my integrity, doing what is right all the time. And I'd like to give you just one incident. It was in April of 2006. We had a young man who was shot by a sniper. And at the time he was shot by a sniper, we had to, and actually, I told this story in a different context at the Cobb Gala. After we loaded him up and got him on the ambulance to get to the airfield, I went to find a unit that was still in contact. And once I found that unit, they actually found an individual who they thought might have been the sniper. And at the time that they found him, we were at a hotel and I had them clear the hotel while I stayed there with the sniper. And one of the things that ran through my mind at that time is it was just me and that man right there sitting there. And I could have shot him. I could have killed him because of what I thought he did to our soldier. But my integrity, my honesty said, no, don't do this. And actually, when my soldiers came down, they thought I would have done it. But I taught them a lesson by saying, no, we always do what's right. And we would find out later that he wasn't the sniper, that somebody else was the sniper. So I was so happy that I did not make that rash decision and do harm to somebody who was innocent. And I'm going to take that same focus into the DA's office. We are going to attack and prosecute those who deserve to be prosecuted. But we are also going to look at each and every case to make sure that we're doing right in each and every step of the prosecution. And that's why it's so important that when we have a defendant who's pro se or does not have an attorney, that we do what's right and hopefully fully fund our circuit defender's office so that everybody can have an attorney at each process or each stage of the criminal justice system.
In the current political climate, we're hearing the GOP dog whistles of law and order, tough on crime politics that have historically resulted in disproportionate racial outcomes. Many would say that these are racist dog whistles. The big D Democratic mantra in response to that is law and order with justice. You are a lifelong Democrat running against a Republican opponent. Does a Democrat bring something different to the DA's office than a Republican would? And what would that be?
I think the biggest thing, especially in our county as a Democrat, I'm not beholden to anyone but the people. And I'm not going to owe favors to anyone. I'm not going to have to cuddle or play soft with anyone, because I have not made those promises to anyone. I have not been placed in a position by anyone. We will have earned the position of district attorney. And I think that's very important, because we don't want someone who's been put in a position who is going to be beholden to a Republican, what's the word I'm trying to use, the Republican policymakers, that's going to do things that they shouldn't do. If we look at our current DA's office, let me tell you some of the things that I've seen so far. They just had 3 cases returned by the Supreme Court for prosecutors providing evidence that should not have been brought into the case. Those 3 cases, the verdicts are being overturned and are going to have to be retried, which is going to cost our community more money. They've also had a situation where right now they're not indicting anyone, but they were able to go indict that young man, the 3 people in Brunswick, but have not done that here in our own county since COVID started, which means those people who are waiting for justice here are sitting behind bars because they cannot get indicted, they cannot get their cases to trial. And that's the wrong answer. We need to make sure we're taking care of home, especially if we're going to take care of somewhere else first. The other thing that we're looking at is too many prosecutors are asking for the very maximum on their sentences. And what that does is for our nonviolent offenders, it makes their jail sentence, their criminal record, a lifelong sentence that hampers them for the rest of their life. And that's something we need to avoid, because when we do that, we set the community up for failure, because that person, when they come out of jail, if they're sentenced.
I think we just lost Flynn.
So while we're waiting for Flynn to come back, wanted to mention that the August 11th runoff election, in-person and absentee voting has already begun. And next week, 4 regional early vote locations will be open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. This Saturday, voting is open at the Whitlock Center. It's not too late to apply for an absentee ballot, but time is running out. To expedite, we suggest you email your ballot request as soon as possible, and then use one of 4 ballot drop boxes in Cobb to submit your ballot. You can drop your ballot in those boxes postage free all the way up until 7 p.m. on election day, and your vote will be counted. You can visit cobbdemocrats.org for more information. And here we have Flynn back. Sorry, lost you there for a minute.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I reloaded the page and we appeared back. So glad to be back.
So we were talking about what's going on with the DA's office right now.
Right. The last point I wanted to make was, and I had this situation in the office today. A young man had a sentence that really put him in a position where we didn't have access to him for control as far as probation was concerned. The sentence was written by the DA's office, one of the DA's assistant DAs, And it's something that they've done quite a few, because when we talked to the Georgia Probation Management, they told us that this situation happens all the time, where because of the way the sentence was written, they lack authority to control that person or to monitor him on probation. And that's something we can't do here in Cobb County, because if we put a person in that position, it means they can do other things without us knowing what they're doing, and losing control of them while they're on probation under a sentence. And that should not happen. And that's something that needs to be corrected.
Okay. Can we be tough on crime and still address racial and social injustice in our criminal justice system?
I truly believe we can be tough on crime, because what we want to do is those criminals or those offenders who are violent offenders who are going to do harm to the community, we want to prosecute them to the max. But for the nonviolent offenders, the first-time offenders, the juvenile offenders, we want to make sentences that bring about restorative justice, where we put them through a program, understand the underlying conditions that cause them to resort to crime. And if we can solve those issues, we can return that person back to the community as a productive citizen. And by doing that through our accountability course, through our diversion, through our pretrial programs, we can reduce the recidivism rate, which makes public safety even much more better.
There's been a lot of talk, push. Governor Kemp has pushed for stronger sentencing and penalties for gang affiliation. And now we have a gang member database. So do you think we have, it was actually Governor Kemp and our former DA, Vic Reynolds, that pushed tighter sentencing for gang members. So do you think we have a gang problem in Cobb County? And do you support this push for increased punishment and sentencing? And if you could also address the criteria for placing a person in the gang member database, is that ripe for abuse and discrimination?
Well, let me answer that first. It's definitely ripe for abuse, because it could be as simple as young kids having a party and all wearing the same color, a neighbor calling because they're making too much loud noise. And now all of a sudden, because they all have on red, they're members of a gang, when it could have been just, let's wear red party. So the criteria to place somebody on that gang list is very expansive, and it does not have a subjective nature to make sure that we're actually putting just gang members on those lists. One of the things that we as a community need to look at is for those young kids who get into gangs, by the time they get to the court system, we may be too late. And so we have to reach them before they come into the court system. We have to talk to them when they're 4th and 5th graders. We have to talk to them when they're 8th graders before they go to the high school. We have to talk to them at the 9th grade orientation, so we can talk to them about the dangers of the gang. We can talk to them about the problems. We can make sure that they understand that their future as a gang member is probably only till they're 25 years old. And so if they really want to have any kind of life, they need to avoid those gangs, and we need to help them do that. And the only way we can do that is for us to reach them early, because by the time they get to the school, it may be, by the time they get to the courts, it may be too late.
Okay. So do we have a gang problem in Cobb County? Is this a very real issue?
It is an issue. I won't say it is as big as they make it out to be, but it is an issue. In Cobb County, we have a big issue in South Cobb with trafficking. A lot of that is related to gang activity, or drugs. A lot of that is related to gang activity. But these are things that we can solve through different programs, through our accountability course, through our pretrial diversion, through our diversion programs, where if we can reach these people, find out why they're resorting to addiction, or why the drugs are taking that much hold on their life, and solve those problems, we can bring them off of drugs. One of the police chiefs even said, we're not going to arrest our way out of a drug of the drug trade, and we need to take that to heart and make sure that we're finding other ways to make it happen.
Okay. What could and would you do as DA to help stem the tide of mass incarceration?
Well, there's a couple of things I like to do. First, for any nonviolent offender, we can avoid jail as much as possible. And those are the people that we want to put through the accountability courts and the diversion programs. Because if they're a nonviolent offender, if they're not going to do any harm to the community, they shouldn't be in jail. For those who are harm to the community, we're going to have to do what we need to do to make sure that they stay in jail so they don't cause any issues in the community. But one of the things I want to do is I want to have a committee called the Truth and Reconciliation Panel. And their job will be to look at every single conviction to make sure, one, that the prosecutors did the right thing, that the officers did the right thing, and that we have a proper sentence. And by doing that, we make sure that we're not putting anybody in jail that shouldn't be in jail. And that committee will be composed of defense lawyers, prosecutors, judges, and people from our community, especially our organizations like the SCLC and the NAACP, so we can take a look as a group and say, hey, the evidence here does not meet the conviction criteria. So we need to either change it, dismiss the charge, or retry it, so we make sure we do what's right for each and every person that we do convict.
And are there steps that can be taken to safely reduce the rate of pretrial incarceration in our county? Things like cash bail are placing people in jail because they quite simply can't afford the bail. So what steps could you take as DA to reduce that rate of pretrial incarceration?
The biggest thing that I want to do is, like I said before, if they're not a violent person, if they're not a threat to the community, then they shouldn't be in jail. So there should be an OR bond. They should be released immediately and allowed to show up for court. Now, for those who are a danger, we're going to either set a high bail or set no bail because they are a danger to the community, and we don't want them out on the street. So by reducing the bail of those who are nonviolent, mostly for OR bonds, I think we can reduce a lot of the pretrial diversion, our pretrial incarceration. And the other thing that we need to understand here in Cobb County is so many people are in jail, not because of their sentence, but because of their probation violations. And so that's another thing that when we set a probation sentence, we need to make sure it's tailored to that person so they can be successful. Just like you said, those people who know money, if you cannot afford an attorney, you cannot afford your bail, you're probably not going to be able to afford any treatment programs or anything like that. So we've got to find a way to finance those things either through grants or through volunteer work to make that happen here in Cobb County.
Great. So what would you do to reduce the number of juveniles, particularly Latino and African American youth who are brought into the criminal justice system? What policies could you put in place to ensure fair and unbiased use of prosecutorial discretion in juvenile court?
I think you said it right there, prosecutorial discretion. We're going to have to make hard decisions on the youth. We're going to have to say, okay, let's get these people some mentors. Let's see if we can bring them about, make them better. One of the things I always tell young kids when I go talk to them at the schools is, don't let your friends bring you down. Bring your friends up to your level. And we've got to get that mantra all through the schools to make sure kids understand that don't let somebody drag you down. Don't let somebody take away your future. We as a community have to do a better job of going to the schools, meeting with the kids, and describing all the things that can happen when you put your life in a position where the court is directing it. And I think we can do that. We have a lot of successful people here in Cobb County that can serve as mentors. We have a lot of mentor programs, but we have to do a little bit more if we want this to happen.
So we've had a number of inmate deaths at the Cobb Adult Detention Center. The current DA has made no call for an investigation of these deaths. Does the DA have a role in holding the sheriff basically to account and calling for an investigation? And would you, if elected as DA, call for such an investigation?
Two parts to that question. The first part, yes, the DA does have a role, and the DA could ask the commissioners to do a grand jury investigation of what's happening at the jail. Now, depending on who is the next sheriff, if Craig Owens wins the sheriff's race in November, then I will allow him 30 days to do his own internal investigation before I would ask to do it, before I went to the commissioners. If the Republican candidate wins, then I will immediately ask for an investigation because he hasn't stepped up to do anything as of yet. I understand now he's got a law firm that's going through and investigating right now. So I want to see those findings before I talk to commissioners, because ultimately we as a community owe to our offenders. When we put them in jail, it's not a death sentence. We should be treating them properly. We should be making sure that they receive the necessary health care, and we should be monitoring them to make sure if they do have any kind of crisis, that we get them to a hospital and get them properly treated. That's our role as in the criminal justice system. As a prosecutor, we have to understand that not only are we seeking justice for the victims, but we're also seeking justice for the offenders too.
So to your knowledge, the current DA has made no such calls for an investigation into these deaths at the adult detention center?
To my knowledge, she has not. It's the only thing that I know right now is that the Wade and Bradley firm has been asked to do an investigation. I don't know how far they've gotten with that, but that was brought on by asked by the current sheriff and not by the DA's office.
Okay. So as you know, we're bringing on the Supreme Court judge and state court judge candidates in a moment here. I get a lot of phone calls and questions from people regarding judge candidates. People simply do not know how to evaluate these candidates to make an informed decision at the ballot box. So do you have any parting words of wisdom? What should people be looking for to evaluate a judge candidate, and what questions should they be asking the candidates before they vote?
Well, one of the things that I would do is I would definitely research all the candidates, do a Google site, a search of their name, just to see what kind of cases they've been involved in, if they've had any cases where they might have shown some type of bias or anything like that, just to see what kind of empathy they may have had when their cases, what kind of cases they've had. Just look at their different background, their different experience, because the one thing you want from a judge is someone who's going to be fair. And if they were a prosecutor and they weren't fair, they're probably not going to be fair as a judge. And that's critical. You want somebody who's done some volunteer work, who's looked at different things and helped people. Because more than anything, we need judges that are empathetic. And one of the things I love about Cobb State Court is when you go to a judge with a sentence that's a little out of the ordinary because you're trying to do restorative justice versus punitive justice, most of them are very amenable to making it happen. And I think that's one of the things we need to look for in our judges. Is it someone who's helped people who needed help? Is it someone who's been fair? Is it someone who you can say, you know, this person has morals, has values that are going to make sure that they treat everybody fair, equal, and just? Because the one thing we don't want is what we see right now when we go to a courtroom, when we see all minorities in the courtroom, the first thing they think is their perception is the justice system isn't fair. And we need to get away from that. We need judges that are going to make sure that when somebody steps in their courtroom, they're going to be treated well, they're going to be treated fair, and they're going to get a just sentence.
Great, thank you, Flynn. I'd like to thank you once again for joining us this evening. Do you have any parting comments you'd like to leave us with?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you again for having me on. I'd like everybody to please visit my website at electbroady.com. Visit my first Facebook page at Flynn D. Broady Jr. Volunteer, donate, come and see what we're talking about, because my plan is to seek restorative justice, to reduce not reduce, but to increase public safety, reduce mass incarceration, and make sure that the justice system is equal and just for everybody. And I think we can do that here in Cobb County, and we can reach our youth prior to them getting to the court system where we can be most effective. And I really think together we can make Cobb County the best it can be.
Great, thank you, Flynn. And we'd love to have you back, maybe in September.
I'd love to do that.
Great, thanks so much. Take care.
You too, Jack.
So now let's move to the second portion of our program, candidates in the August 11th runoff election. And as I explained earlier, in-person and absentee voting has already begun for the August 11th runoff. Next week, 4 regional early vote locations will be open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And this Saturday, voting is open at the Whitlock Central office west of Marietta Square. It's not too late to apply for an absentee ballot, but time is running out. To expedite, we suggest you mail your ballot request as soon as possible and then use one of 4 ballot drop boxes in Cobb to submit your ballot. You can drop your ballot in those boxes postage free all the way up until 7 p.m. on election day, and your vote will be counted. You can visit cobbdemocrats.org for more information. So let's start with the candidates for Superior Court Clerk, Nancy Syrop and Connie Taylor. This is a Democratic primary runoff election. The winner on August 11th will go on to run against the Republican candidate in November. So we'll give each candidate 2 minutes to address voters. Let's start with Ms. Taylor. Hello, Connie, can you hear me? Are you on mute, Connie?
Connie, we cannot hear you.
Do we want to go to Nancy while we work out Connie's mic?
Probably. Connie, I would suggest refreshing the web page, and that should do it. That's been fixing a lot of issues for a lot of candidates tonight.
Nancy, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. So you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Jackie, and thank you, Cobb County Democratic Committee. I'm Nancy Syrop, and I'm running to be your next Clerk of Superior Court. I believe knowledge of the courts is a critical, vital component of running a successful office, and I'm the most qualified and experienced candidate in that respect. I'm a lawyer. I have 30 years of experience practicing law. With 28 of those years, I've been focusing on Cobb County. I understand the court system and the needs of the people it serves. I am a regular user of the clerk's office, and I have a unique perspective, I think, on what services are needed and the goals of the clerk's office. Every day, the clerk's office deals with judges and lawyers and citizens of Cobb County, and the clerk has to be ready to deal with all these people and meet all of their needs. I have working relationships with all of these people, and I work with these people and have for my whole career. I've spent my career helping people of Cobb in some of their toughest times and in some of their happiest times too, luckily. And what has allowed me to help these people was my knowledge of the law and the court system. And I'll bring these same skills to the office of the Clerk of the Superior Court. Cobb County needs to know that they can count on the next Clerk of Superior Court to carefully maintain the records and protect the integrity of those records and the data that is collected from those records. And I am that person. I can do that. I can step into this job on day one and begin working for Cobb County with efficiency and ability. I have lived and worked in Cobb County for 28 years. I've raised my family here and I built my business here. Cobb is my home, and I want to serve the people of Cobb so they have a clerk's office they know is reliable and that they can be confident in. When you cast your ballot in the runoff, you need to be confident in your choice. So I encourage you, for more information about me, please look at my website at nancyforcobb.com, or go to my Facebook at Nancy Syrop for Superior Court Clerk.
That is time.
I appreciate it. Thank you for your time, and vote Nancy Syrop August 11th. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. And we have Connie.
Not yet, no.
Okay, so let's move on to Superior Court Judge. So next up, we have Jason Marbutt and Greg Shenton running for Superior Court Judge. This is a nonpartisan runoff election. The winner on August 11th will be the duly elected Superior Court Judge. This is not a primary. So again, we will give each candidate 2 minutes to address the voters, and we'll start with Mr. Marbutt.
Thanks, Jackie. I appreciate the opportunity to address the listeners tonight. I'll take a page out of my opponent's playbook and Mr. Broady's playbook and say people can Google my name and see that. But here's what I want you to do. When you do that, I don't want you to stop on page 1, because there's been a couple of canned articles that my opponent has really been trying to push to get people to say, in every Zoom forum I go on, that's what's said. Go Google this so we can look at cases. But you'll see about 10 pages worth of articles about me, because I have devoted myself to public service. I felt the first call to public service more than 20 years ago when I was a public school teacher through Teach for America. And in teaching through Teach for America, I had a classroom experience that was in the inner city Newark, in the heart of the largest housing complex there in Newark. All of my kids were people of color, Hispanic or African American. What I felt was the call for inequality. I felt the call to go teach there. And what I discovered when I was there was more than I imagined. We had a dead body in a school. I have a scar on my hand from a knife fight that I broke up, saved a kid's life. We had a student shot by his mother's boyfriend. I remember going and making a home visit and talking with one of my dear students and trying to figure out what was going on. We had homeless students. We had students whose parents were ravaged by drug addiction. And so after a couple of years, I decided to go to law school, and I came out of law school wanting to do public service. And for the same reasons that Mr. Broady talked about wanting to be a DA, that's the same reasons that I have been a senior assistant district attorney working here in Cobb. And what you'll find is that I've handled thousands of cases in the system working for equality of people of all races, victims, defendants. I built a house in Mableton and lived there for 7 years after law school. What you'll find when you Google my name is that my opponent keeps wanting to push one case, but that's it, because that's all they can find, because I've been doing good work, and I want you to stand on, I want to stand on all my good work over the course of my career, and I want to run on my qualifications. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Greg Shenton. Greg is a candidate for Superior Court Judge. Hi, Greg. You have 2 minutes.
All right. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I appreciate it. Please go to my website, gregforjudge.com. You'll see my lifetime of service to the community. I've been on the board of directors for the Marietta Kiwanis Club, serving those most in need through our laundromat libraries, where we give books to children who have to go with their parents to do their laundry at the laundromats. You'll see me riding the buses for Marietta City Schools, handing out lunches to kids in apartment complexes and who have to live at extended stay motels because they're homeless. You'll see my chairmanship at the Law Day Classic Golf Tournament, where we fund the Children's Emergency Fund, which gives grants to those kids in need. A couple of years ago, we set a child's broken arm because he didn't have the money to go get it set. As far as professionally, our background is that Jason is a career prosecutor. He worked at a small firm for a couple months his first year after fresh out of law school, but he's been in the solicitor's office and the district attorney's office most of his career. I am a business litigator. I've represented small businesses. I've represented the little guy against big companies. If you look at my cases, you'll find it. My opponent, Mr. Marbutt, has been misrepresenting my trial experience lately. Last night, he said on a forum, I've only tried 5 cases in 20 years, which is recklessly inaccurate. It's not based on anything. I've tried a number of cases. You can look at an appellate record just to look at the ones that have been appealed and probably see more than 5. I've orally argued cases before the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals in the Federal Circuit, which is the court right below the U.S. Supreme Court. And I was successful in getting a partial reversal of the trial court in that case. I litigated cases from Nevada to Nebraska to Texas to Illinois to Georgia. But what the Superior Court does and what people need to understand is that I asked the judge, I said, how many jury trials do the 10 judges together collectively handle in 1 month? And the answer was about 5. So typically a Superior Court judge does 1 jury trial every other month based on that. And so most of what a Superior Court judge is not trial related. It's motions related, it's hearings related. And that's what a business lawyer does. Most of a business law case is hearing and motion related. I've got the demeanor and temperament, and I take Jason up on his offer. And it's not just one case that's problematic for Jason. There's Clayton versus Minor.
Thank you, Greg. That is time. We'll let you finish that thought, but 2 minutes is up.
Sure. There's Clayton, there's Minor, there's the Landon Terrell case, there's the Reconnecting Families case, there's where he entrapped people, there's his change and his campaigns around from red to blue, and there's his problematic campaign materials that are out there. They're all there on Google, and so take Jason up on his offer and Google him, and then Google me and see who's out there and who's true to themselves.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Good night. I'm being told, Jason Marbutt would like to give a response. We'll allow him 30 seconds.
Hey, thank you. And I'll be brief. I just want to bring up that Reconnecting Families case that he mentioned, the juvenile court case. Mr. Shenton's biggest contributor, Justin Odell, is connected with that case. He gave him $8,300, more than he's allowed to give for campaign finance. And that is a large part of the push for Mr. Shenton's campaign, is that case, because it was the biggest corruption case in Cobb County juvenile court, and I prosecuted it, and they're mad about it. And that's a large reason that he's going after me and has been so, I guess, negative toward me. I really want to run on the qualification, and I appreciate you guys focusing on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. So Matt, you're telling me that Connie, we're gonna, is Connie on the line? Connie Taylor?
Yes. Let me bring her in.
Connie, can you hear us? Can we hear you? We still can't hear Connie. I can't hear her, Matt. We can't hear you, Connie. So let's move on to state court judge. I don't know if you can communicate with Connie through text, Matt?
If you could message me her number so I can confirm that. Yes, I will try to.
Let's move on to state court judge here quickly. So to close out the evening, we have two runoff candidates for state court judge, Trina Griffiths and Diana Simmons. This is also a nonpartisan runoff election, so the winner on August 11th will be the duly elected state court judge. We'll hear first from Ms. Griffiths. You have 2 minutes.
Trina is not in the staging area right now.
Okay, is Diana?
Yes.
So let's bring Diana up. Hi, Diana.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Nice to see you. We have you have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Diana Simmons. I am running for state court judge here in Cobb County. I am a prosecutor. I've actually worked with Flynn Broady for the past decade, a little over a decade, I think now. I'm a career prosecutor. My first job out of law school was to do the domestic violence unit for Clayton County. An opportunity came available to move to Cobb, and I kind of jumped on it. My mission as a prosecutor has never been all about stats or conviction rates. I try really hard not to concern myself with that. My mission has been to do the right thing in every case, no matter what that is. I truly believe as long as you seek justice, whatever the verdict or outcome, as long as justice is your goal, the outcome is correct. We are coming away from the old school style of prosecution. We're we're past the war on drugs and tough on crime era. That's certainly something that I've tried to do in my career as a prosecutor. I truly believe that's not the way that we need to be. I think you can get a lot more done and change a lot more people's lives by being smart on crime rather than being tough on crime. Some of my two passions that I would like to pursue more as state court judge is our veterans and military families. I'd like to see a veterans court established in Cobb State Court, and young youthful offenders. I choose to remain a prosecutor because I truly believe that a good prosecutor can do more to fix the criminal justice system in one day than just about any other actor. My inclination is to stay in what might not be a perfect system and try to fix it from the inside rather than fight against it. I am also a mom to 3 young boys. They are 7, 4, and 3, and they attend or will attend when we can attend school again. They go to Marietta City Schools. I care a lot about what the future looks like, not just for my kids, but for all of our kids. I truly believe that there is no such thing as another woman's child. So, anytime I see a young adult or teenager standing up there in court with their parents, I am under I could see that being me one day with my sons, and I always think about how I would want a judge to treat my boys.
2 minutes.
Oh, thank you. Diana for Cobb.com if you want to learn more about me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Diana. Take care.
Thank you. You too.
So where are we at? Do we have Trina in the waiting room?
Looks like I'm actually getting a phone call from her now. Let me mute myself.
Okay. So we are in the midst of hearing from our August 11th runoff candidates. We've heard from the Superior Court judge candidates, Jason Marbutt and Greg Shenton. We have also heard from the Superior Court clerk candidate, Nancy Syrop. We're having some technical issues with Connie Taylor, who is running for Superior Court clerk as well. That is a Democratic primary runoff. They are both running on the Democratic ballot. And the winner of the August 11th runoff will go on to run against the Republican candidate on November 3rd. So hopefully we'll be able to bring Connie Taylor up here in a moment to hear from her. We're also waiting to hear from Trina Griffiths, who is running for state court judge. She is running against Diana Simmons, who we just heard from. That is a runoff election. So the winner of the August 11th runoff election will be the duly elected state court judge. There will be no further elections for that race. So give us a minute or two and we'll try to bring up either Trina Griffiths or Connie Taylor. While we're waiting, I'll go on to inform you about some upcoming announcements. Please join us next Thursday, August 6th, for a program on the right to vote. So we will be here, a virtual program right here on Facebook Live at Cobb Democrats. We will be, the Right to Vote program will be commemorating the anniversary of the Voting Rights Act on August 8th. We'll be joined by Cobb's very own Sarah Tyndall-Gazal, the former DPG Director of Voter Protection and current candidate for Georgia House District 45 in East Cobb. We'll also be joined by Adrian Jones, who's an assistant professor at Morehouse College and a Voting Rights Act expert. And also Sarah Draper, who is the current DPG Director of Voter Protection. So it'll be an interesting evening talking about all things voting, the Voting Rights Act then, the Voting Rights Act today, and the current state of voter protection here in Georgia in the upcoming election. So be sure to join us next Thursday here, Facebook Live at 7 p.m. And it should be a great night. So any progress, Matt?
Sorry, Jackie, doing some troubleshooting with Trina Griffiths.
So do we have her in the room yet?
Not quite yet, but I think we are on our way.
Okay, and what's happening with Connie?
Unclear.
All right, we don't seem to be able to bring Connie Taylor up. What's happening with Trina, Matt?
All right, so we are having technical difficulties with both Trina and Connie trying to sort that out, but I think we may have to go with an alternate method of getting them to record a stump speech, since these clerk and judicial candidates, it's basically a stump speech. We may need to have them record something and share that with us, and we can share that with our audience, both on the page and in the comments on this broadcast.
Okay. So we apologize for these difficulties. We would have liked to bring Connie Taylor, a candidate for Superior Court Clerk, to you, and Trina Griffiths, the candidate for State Court Judge. But we will make other arrangements and let you know. So we're going to sign off for tonight. Thank you to all the candidates who did join us this evening. And we urge you to stay safe, stay healthy, wear a mask, and socially distance, and have a great night. Thank you.